Okay, so the next topic we're going to talk about is the last of our word problems here. It's solving a percent mixture problem using a system of linear inequations, okay? Or linear equations, I'm sorry. So what you're going to do here is you're going to take a look at just kind of like the distance rate time problem. You're going to try to figure out what is the best way to kind of isolate your variable. So let's take a look at the problem first. Okay, so the petroleum company has two different types of crude oil. The first source provides a crude oil that is 45% hydrocarbons, and the second type has a crude oil that is 95% hydrocarbons. So in order to obtain 130 gallons of crude oil that is 90% hydrocarbons, how do we, how many gallons of crude oil must be used of each type of the two sources? So, well, remember, we're trying to find a variable, what we're trying to solve for, an x and a y, right? Well, we want to say, what are they going to represent? Well, they're going to represent what we're trying to find. What we're trying to find almost always comes from that last sentence. It says, how many gallons of crude oil must be used from each type? Gallons. That's what we want to know. We want to know gallons. So in order to find gallons, what we're going to do is we're going to call X maybe the first, we'll say that's the first type and that's the first type gallons. All right. So how many gallons we're going to use of the first type, and we'll say Y is the second type gallons. So we're talking about X and Y will represent how many gallons of the first type and how many gallons of the second type. So now, what do you need to do? You need to jump into the word problem and see if you can pull some equations. Like it's systems of equations. You should always have two equations. So it says, uh, well, let's see. Where's the easy one? There's always an easy one and a hard one. Well, I think your easy one is right here. It says, in order to obtain 30 gallons of crude oil. So if you think about it, my final mixture when I'm done should be 30 gallons. Does that make sense? Or, I'm sorry, 130 gallons. So if I take the number of gallons I'm using for X and I add it to the number of gallons I'm using for Y, I should expect to get 130 gallons altogether. And that should make sense because it says in order to obtain 130 gallons. Now we're going to talk about these weird percentages, okay? These weird percentages that are related to these hydrocarbons, okay? So it says the first source, okay, uses a crude oil that has 45% hydrocarbons, and the second source uses 95% hydrocarbons, okay? So that's kind of interesting. It feels like those should be attached to each other. It says the crude oil that in our final mixture should be 90% hydrocarbons, okay? So what we want to do is we want to think about it, okay? So if we know the first source has 45% hydrocarbons, we're going to call it 45 is 0.45 times my first source, gallons. So that's how many hydrocarbons in that many gallons I use, okay? And if I add that to the hydrocarbons that's in the second source, which is 0.95, that's in the second source, will give me a total, and I want to have a final mixture that is 0.9, okay? But look, it's percentage gallons. So here's my percentage, here's my gallons that I want. Hopefully those two equations make sense. But what I did is I took each part and I added those up, so and I got my final mixture there. So now you've done the hard part. The easy part comes in solving it. You can either solve it by substitution, elimination. You can use a matrix if you'd like. But me, I'm gonna do it with Desmos. I'm gonna do it graphic. Okay. So if I type these two equations in, let me get them over here so I can see them both. All right. Let's see. We have an x plus a y equals 130. And remember, the important part here is you need to know what you're trying to solve for. You have to know that first. So plus 0.95y equals 0.9 times 130. Well, let's hope this is a nice pretty point. If it's not, we probably did something wrong. So let's see. Oh yeah, that's pretty. Okay, so there you go. So my x value is 13, my y value is 117, and those are nice, good looking points. So that's probably my answer. Um, so yeah, and it makes sense too. Yeah, because if you add them together, it gets 130. Yeah, so we're good. So our answers are going to be for x, we're going to have 13, and for y, we're going to have 117. Let me write that down. So for x, we want it to be 13. For y, we want it to be 117. And you're done. That's all you got to do. Okay? So, piece of cake. Hopefully you knock that one out and get moving on to some other stuff. Okay, good luck.